Hello. Um, I'm just gonna get right into the video. I don't really have an intro or nothing. I already prayed before I did this video, and I wanted to let as many people know as possible, as many people that I can reach, about BLM. I recently did a bit of research, and I even have an article that I thought was really interesting that I want to read to y'all. But the whole gist of this video is that BLM is okay, Lord. BLM is a Trojan horse. It's everything that they do, everything that they claim that they stand for, it just so happens to work against black people. Not only do we look bad, like on a global scale, like the whole world can see what BLM and Antifa is doing, all the buildings that they're destroying, everything that they're setting on fire. You know, they've set churches on fire. BLM. Why is BLM and Antifa, anti-fascists, setting churches on fire? Apparently, according to one of the co-founders of BLM, it's because that they're trained Marxists. And Marxism, according to Karl Marx, the founder of Marxism, he said that the purpose of communism was to destroy capitalism and dethrone God. I found a few really interesting quotes from Karl Marx. And one of them was the one that I just read. And another is where he writes, "The abolition of religion as the illusory happiness of a man is a requisite for their real happiness. The call to abandon their illusions about their conditions is a call to abandon a condition which requires illusion." Let me read that direct quote to you again. "The abolition of religion is the illusory happiness of a man, is a requisite for their real happiness. The call to abandon their illusions about their conditions is a call to abandon a condition which requires illusion." So Marx felt like he had the answers as to what can genuinely make people happy. And he thinks that, or he thought that religion, which is just an illusion, their God, which is just an illusion, and as soon as he gets rid of their illusion of God, then they can really be happy. So he felt like he knew what it takes to make somebody happy, and getting rid of their idea of God and a higher power was it. And I actually have a couple more quotes from some of his work that leads me to believe that not only was he like really anti-religious, he kind of teetered along the lines of like Satanism. If you know, to put it really nicely, I would say he's a full-blown Satanist, as much of an enemy he made God out to be. But let me just read some quotes to you. This is from his poem that he wrote called "Invocation of One in Despair." "So a God has snatched from me my all, in the curse and rack of destiny. All his words are gone beyond real. Nothing but revenge is left for me. I shall build my throne high overhead. Cold, tremendous shall its summit be. For its bulwark, superstitious dread. For its marshal, blackest agony." And the article that I got this from, it made this really eerie comparison and I noticed it, the line, "I shall build my throne high overhead." It compared it to the verse Isaiah 14:13 in the Bible. It reads, "I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God." That's the verse, Isaiah 14. "I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God." Let me read to you this line from his poem that sounds pretty similar. "I shall build my throne high overhead. Cold, tremendous shall its summit be." Now, in Isaiah 14, "I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God," that's what the devil said. And I noticed how similar those two lines are. And here's another quote from his poem that he wrote called "The Player." The hellish vapors rise and fill the brain. Rise and fill the brain. Till I go mad, and my heart is utterly changed. See this sword? The Prince of Darkness sold it to me. For me beats the time and gives the signs. Ever more boldly, I play the dance of death. And a particular line from this poem reminded me of a really satanic poem that I heard that was debuted on Beyonce's Lemonade album. It's called Denial. Let me read a few of the lines that sounded really similar to this, especially the line, see this sword? The Prince of Darkness sold it to me. First of all, who is the Prince of Darkness? That's the devil. Alright, so let's see. Should I just read this whole thing right quick? I'm gonna just read the whole thing right quick, okay? I tried to change, close my mouth more, tried to be soft, prettier, less awake, fasted for 60 days, wore white, abstained from mirrors, abstained from sex, slowly did not speak another word. In that time, my hair grew past my ankles. I slept on a mat on the floor. I swallowed a sword. There goes the sword again. What's with the sword? I don't know. I guess only Satanists and high priestesses know what the sword is about. I levitated into the basement, confessed my sins, and was baptized in a river. Got on my knees and said amen, and said I mean. I whipped my own back, asked for dominion at your feet. I threw myself into a volcano. I drank the blood and drank the wine. I sat alone and begged and bent at the waist for God. I crossed myself in thought, which is meditation. I saw the devil. There's the Prince of Peace Marx was talking about. I grew thickened skin on my feet. I bathed in bleach and plugged my menses with the pages from the Holy Book. I'm gonna just stop there because the rest is BS. That don't got nothing to do with that. The rest of the poem. It just threw some stuff in there that made it seem like she was talking about her and her marital problems. But that whole poem is a satanic ritual. And then gonna throw in at the very end, but inside me, coiled deep, was the need to know, are you cheating on me? None of that had anything to do with marital issues. That's a satanic ritual. I bathed in bleach. I grew thickened skin on my feet because Satanists, people during those satanic rituals, they had to walk on hot coals and stuff. Why are you bathing in bleach? I drank the blood and the wine. Anyway, this ain't about Beyonce. So yeah, I swallowed a sword. I crossed myself in thought. I saw the devil. And this just really eerily reminded me of like when he said, ever more boldly I play the dance of death. See this sword? The Prince of Darkness sold it to me. Like the part where he said ever more boldly, I immediately thought of Denial, where Beyonce read that line, I plugged my menses with the pages from the Holy Book. That's bold. That with that very line, Beyonce pretty much declared herself an enemy to not only God, but the Bible and Christians, God's children. She was basically letting us know, I am your enemy. Here I am making a mockery of your holy book. So I'm I guess metaphorically plugging my bloody vagina with pages from the holy book. I just felt like that was really bold, and she said it a few lines after she's talking about I crossed myself in thought and saw the devil. So yeah, back to Marxism. So they claim to be trained Marxists, and Karl Marx taught that socialism was a temporary transition to communism, and Marxist communism is responsible for over 100 million deaths. And not only does their organization strike me as odd because of the Marxist stuff, even though that's really enough. You know, they are just violent. They come off as just an entire terrorist organization. You know, I have a You know, they claim to be anti-fascism, especially Antifa, which is supposed to stand for anti-fascist. Anti-fascism is a political philosophy, movement, or regime, so in this case a movement, that exalts nation and race above the individual, and that stands for centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, headed by a dictatorial leader, and it calls for severe economic and social regimentation and forcible suppression and opposition. And that's exactly what they do. Try to forcibly suppress. They try to scare everybody and terrorize everybody into doing their bidding by threatening to burn everything down. They literally have done that. They literally threatened to burn down the what did that the leader of the Black Lives Matter organization in New York, he said, if we don't get what we want, we're going to burn down the establishment, and you can take it however you want. It could be metaphorical, it could be literal. It depends on how you want to take it. That's literally what he said on like, I don't know what news station it was, but those are the words that came out of his mouth. They really are just violent thugs that are just throwing temper tantrums. They you know, every time the media posts a black person getting shot by a police officer, regardless of what that person did to get themselves in that situation, they're taking that and they're using it as an excuse to go burn stuff down. To be marching in the middle of the street so angry, acting like they're so oppressed. They're literally looting and destroying black-owned businesses in black neighborhoods and black majority black communities. What sense does that make? How are you, Black Lives Matter, destroying black-owned businesses, destroying shops, mom and pop shops, and local businesses in your own city that you shop at? What sense does that make? And how is that helping the black community? And all this money that they've been funded, that they've been getting from everybody donating to Black Lives Matter, where is that money going? Has any of it gone back to the community? You know, I did a little research, and you know, I was inspired to look this up because I saw that video of Michelle Obama talking about how you know, who did she say was lying? Trump or somebody was lying, telling you that, you know, the protests are so violent when in reality they're majority peaceful. And I looked up these numbers, and they said that only 7% of BLM protests have resulted in, I guess, stuff getting destroyed, have resulted in violence, right? So I did the math. Apparently there has been 7,750 BLM and Antifa demonstrations. So 7,750 times 7%, 0.07. That's 542. 542 violent demonstrations, and listen to this, that has caused almost or over somewhere around $2 billion worth of damage. So 442 violent demonstrations has resulted in roughly $2 billion worth of damage. And you want to know something else? BLM, they claim to be, you know, anti-black people dying. They're trying to limit the amount of black deaths, and they just hate to see black people get killed, and you know, they get so emotional over it. But the number one cause of black deaths is abortion. But do you ever see Black Lives Matter protests in front of these abortion clinics? I haven't. Not once. Not once have I seen a BLM protest or any kind of gathering of any, like, I've never even seen one of them mention abortion. That's the number one killer of black lives. The number one. Let me read off some numbers to you right quick. While African Americans make up about 13% of the U.S. population, black babies account for nearly 40% of the abortions committed each year. In New York City, there are thousands more black babies aborted than actually born each year. And I'm sure, as everyone knows, Planned Parenthood was pioneered by Margaret Sanger. In 1939, Sanger and Planned Parenthood launched the Negro Project, whose aim was to push birth control and abortion on black women. So, I guess they consider abortion birth control, right? Sanger wanted healthy, wealthy, and strong people to have more babies, and the poor, and the sick, and the disabled, and the minority people in poor neighborhoods, she wanted them to have fewer babies. And in 2012, an organization called Protecting Black Life used U.S. Census data to show that almost 80% of Planned Parenthood's existing abortion clinics that year were located within 2 miles of a majority black or Hispanic neighborhood. So clearly, Planned Parenthood is still keeping Margaret Sanger's legacy alive and well. They still have her same mission to take out as many minority babies as humanly possible. There have been upwards, according to American Spectator. And those last couple of those last couple of details I got off of Life News. So you can fact check all of this if you like. I got it from Life News, and according to American Spectator, there have been upwards of 20 million abortions of unborn African American babies since Roe versus Wade in 1973. And you know what else is really interesting? Regardless of all the black lives that Planned Parenthood is responsible for cutting out, the thing is, when you kill a baby, you're not just deleting a person from existence. You're canceling out entire generations. That baby grows up and has more babies, and then their babies grow up and have more babies. When you kill a child, not only are you canceling out blessings that all that this human being had to offer throughout its entire lifespan, you're canceling out entire generations. So regardless of all the black generations, millions, regardless of the millions of black generations that Planned Parenthood and black mothers, because I'm all for accountability. I'm not gonna pass the buck and act like it's all Planned Parenthood's fault. Black mothers as well, regardless of all the life that they are responsible for ending, all the generations they're responsible for canceling out. The co-founders of BLM, they stand with Planned Parenthood. They work along. Matter of fact, I found this is on like Breitbart.com. I read this from. It said former CEO of Planned Parenthood Cecile Richards and BLM co-founder Alicia Garza partnered with the director of National Domestic Workers Alliance to create a, quote, women's New Deal for gender equality, end quote, in April of 2019. A co-founder of an organization or a movement called Black Lives Matter has no business whatsoever partnering with anybody, a worker, a janitor, anybody from Planned Parenthood. She is partnering with the CEO of the lead killers of Black life. The leading causes of death of Black life. She's funding with the CEO of that organization, Cecile Richards. You know what else I read? So not only are these BLM co-founders trained Marxists, these are their own words, they call themselves trained Marxists, and Karl Marx seems to me like a full-blown Satanist, and responsible, his ideologies are responsible for over 100 million deaths. How in the world do you care so much about Black people, but your movement utilizes Marxism, something that is responsible for millions upon millions of deaths? Why would you want Why would you want something that's responsible for all of those deaths to have anything to do with your movement? That doesn't make any sense to me. And I read this really interesting article that not only painted them as psychos who don't know what they're doing, because why in the world of all of all the things would you choose Marxism to pioneer your movement? But they confess to full-on witchcraft. I read this. I'm gonna read this article to you right quick, okay? So it's, first of all, the title reads, BLM co-founder who admitted she's a trained Marxist now confesses to practicing witchcraft. And she really did. Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrisse Cullors has admitted the movement is not just about racial and social justice, but at its core, it's a spiritual movement that involves invoking spirits with mantras and gifts until those spirits actually become present with you. That's the quote. She really said this. Invoking spirits, quote, end quote, and then, quote, those spirits actually become present with you, end quote. Okay? Spirits are invoked by repeating mantras, including the say her name or say his name refrain, and pouring libation. Apparently they've done this like in front of like BLM crowds right before March, pouring libation for the spirits and presenting them with gifts like honey or tobacco and things like that until they manifest themselves and work through her, admits the BLM co-founder. BLM is not just an attack on freedom, property, statues of great Americans, history, and Western civilization. We now know it is a dark spiritual movement and an attack on Christianity and God, which Marxism is anyway. The roots of Marxism was embedded in being anti-God, anti-religion. In a recorded conversation with Cullors, BLM Los Angeles founder and California State University professor of African Studies, Melina Abdullah, apparently shared more than she thought she should have. She explained, quote, maybe I'm sharing too much, but we've become very intimate with the spirits that we call on regularly, end quote. She goes on, like, each of them seems to have a different presence and personality, you know. I laugh a lot with Waukesha, you know, and I didn't meet her in her body, right? I met her through this work. So these are real live necromancers that delve into real witchcraft. These are real witches. Cullors echoes the sentiments of Abdullah. It's a very important practice. Hashtags are for us. Are way more than a hashtag. It's literally almost resurrecting a spirit so they can work through us to get to the work that we need to get done, said Cullors. Quote, I started to feel personally connected and responsible and accountable to them, both from a deeply political place, but also from a deeply spiritual place. Always, you know, I am, in my tradition, you offer things that your loved one who loved, passed away, would want. Whether it's like honey or tobacco, things like that. And that's so important, not just for us to be in direct relationship to our people who have passed, but also for them to know we've remembered them. I believe so many of them work through us. End quote. I don't know if I quoted that, but that was a quote. Cullors also admits that the very first thing BLM leaders do when they hear of a murder is pray to the spirits and pour libation. Libation, L-I-B-A-T-I-O-N. Go ahead and look that up. Again, she emphasized this is not just about racial and social justice. At its core, it's a spiritual movement. You can't pretend like that work is just organizing work. That's, you know, some serious stuff. According to her, it's serious stuff. The whole say his name mantra also has deep spiritual significance, according to Cullors. When we say the names, right? So we speak the names. We say her name, say their names. We do all that all the time, that you kind of invoke that spirit, and then those spirits actually become present with you, she explained, revealing something that virtually none of the useful idiots attending BLM rallies understand. Apparently she calls them useful idiots. She don't even respect the people that she's rallying up and getting to march for her fake cause. Spirituality is at the center of Black Lives Matter, according to Colors. And I think it's not just for us. I feel like so many leaders and so many organizers are deeply engaged and in a pretty important spiritual practice. I don't think I could do this work without that. I don't think I could do it as long as I've done it and as consistently. It feels like if I didn't do it, that it would be antithetical to this work. So what they're describing is their adherence to the Yoruba religion of Ifa, to where they're summoning dead spirits. What Colors reveals is exactly what the Apostle Paul was referring to in Ephesians when he explained that Christians wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness. Sounds about right. The Bible is very clear about what is happening here. As consulting spirits of the dead is strictly prohibited. In fact, under the Old Testament law revealed by God for Israel, necromancy, consulting the dead, that's what necromancy is. Or in other words, talking to dead spirits, consulting with the spirits, the ancestors, all of that, was punishable by death. All those who do it are described as detestable to God. Multiple passages in the Old and New Testaments also suggest that the supposed spirits that necromancers and witches believe they are communicating with and are sacrificing things to are in fact demons. And then later on in the article, it gets into how all the various ways that BLM protesters and activists have been terrorizing churches. Apparently one that they hit was Grace Baptist Church. They have a video showing a bunch of BLM activists gathering and trying to force their way up the stairs with their what are those things called? Their microphones, their amplifiers, or I forgot what those things are called. But I'm not gonna really get into that. What I'm really gonna say is, and I'm gonna make a second part to this because I got so much more to say, and I'm already about to hit 30 minutes. But I would really encourage whoever is watching this, and if you consider yourself an activist for or advocate for BLM, you might want to consider what you're really getting yourself into. They are delving into real satanic rituals, real spiritual practices where they're summoning spirits. Y'all, that's satanic. That's witchcraft. The co-founders, the BLM co-founders, the ones who founded the movement, they're witches and they're Marxists. And Karl Marx himself seems to me like a Satanist. To see it, and I heard somebody else say this, that Karl Marx was a Satanist. He didn't believe in God. Not only did he not believe in God, he considered himself an enemy to God. I don't know how you can not believe in something and consider yourself an enemy to it at the same time. But maybe that's just Satanism. I have no idea. Perhaps I should look up what Satanism actually is. I might do a video on it after I do that research. But yeah, saints, I highly, you know what? I should have read a verse. I meant to read a verse before I did this. I was gonna read a verse to y'all, but I'll just read it in my next video. What I will do is I'll cap this video off with a prayer. Dear Lord, please pray with me. Dear Lord, I ask that you keep your hand over us, Lord, and lead us away from temptation, Lord, and from the wiles of the devil and his antics. Lord, I pray that you give us wisdom, Lord, and I pray that you just keep us on the straight and narrow, and keep us away from the devil and his devices. And Lord, just keep us covered with your blood. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Alright, y'all. I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.